gotta pack up your tent and ride. Pack up your tent and ride. Good grub cooking on a fire tonight. Pack up your tent and ride.
Hi, I'm Fraser Douglas, and I was an avid tent camper for over 55 years. On many of our camping trips, I enjoyed cooking great tasting meals in our cast iron cookware. In particular, I enjoyed cooking big breakfasts in the morning and a variety of soups and stews later in the day. And so I thought I'd make this video to share with you my top 12 tips for frying and stewing in cast iron cookware. I hope you learned something of value from this video. Before we start talking about cooking, let me just briefly explain why we prefer vintage cast iron cookware over new cast iron cookware. Vintage cast iron, made before 1960, will be relatively lightweight so that you can easily pick it up and move it about your kitchen area, and will have a smooth cooking surface that will be very easy to clean. And you can usually find a good vintage 10-inch skillet for less than $45 and a good vintage 5-quart Dutch oven for less than $60. Newer cast iron cookware with the same features would run anywhere from $175 up to $300, while the more economically priced cast iron cookware that cost about the same price as the vintage cast iron cookware will be much heavier and have a rougher cooking surface. And now let me share my top 12 tips for frying and simmering foods in cast iron cookware. First of all, you must plan ahead the sequence in which you plan to cook the various different foods for your meal, because in a campsite, you'll have a limited amount of cookware and a small cooking fire. As a general rule, we cook or brown or sear our meat first, then we'll saute our onions, peppers, garlic, and other vegetables. Next, we'll begin to combine ingredients according to the recipe. And then finally, we'll make our gravies or sauces if necessary. Second, make sure you got plenty of workspace. You'll need a place to prepare and stage your ingredients. You'll need a place to put your cooking utensils when you don't need them. You'll need a place to put your hot lid when you need to add or stir your ingredients or serve your food. And you'll need a place to put the hot pot after you finish cooking. In your home kitchen, you have plenty of countertops as your workspace, but in a campsite, you may have to improvise to make your workspace. Ideally, you have enough packing space in your car to pack a couple of folding tables that can be moved near the campfire ring, pedestal grill, or inside of a cooking tent. If you don't have the packing space to pack some folding tables, then you could set up your cooking area on one end of the picnic table, or possibly drag the picnic table over near the fire ring. In Michigan, most of the campgrounds have fire rings with wide concrete sides that can be used as workspace. And many Army Corps of Engineers campgrounds have these small wooden tables that can be moved close to the pedestal grill or the campfire ring. But in many campgrounds, the only option you have is the picnic table, and it cannot be moved near the fire ring. So, if possible, families always need to pack a couple of folding tables. And roll-top tables require the least amount of packing space. And for maximum comfort, buy or make some leg extenders so that you can raise at least one of those tables to a countertop height of 36 inches. Third, you'll need to have some hot pot holders and some hot pads handy to handle your cast iron because it can get dangerously hot after sitting over a fire for several minutes. You'll need gloves or oven mitts or pot holders to pick up and move your cast iron pieces, and you'll need pads on the table to place your hot pieces after you've taken them off of the fire. You could use your cutting board or an ordinary piece of wood as a hot pad, and sometimes we just use a washcloth or a linen napkin as a hot pad or a hot pot holder. Fourth, if you're using a lid to cover your skillet or Dutch oven, then you'll need a specific place to put it when you need to remove it to stir your food or serve your food. I included this tip because I had a very painful personal experience that I hope you can avoid. Several years ago, I bought this Wagner Ware Dutch oven with this very beautiful and rare lid. And then I cracked the lid 2 days after I got it. I cracked it when I hurriedly placed it upside down on a crowded countertop in order to stir some food in the pot, and then accidentally bumped it and it slid off the countertop onto the tile floor. Fortunately, I was able to find a welder that was able to repair it with brass, but that crack now has reduced the value of this piece forever. My fifth tip is to use wood or bamboo utensils as much as possible and to avoid metal, plastic, and nylon utensils as much as possible. Now, we occasionally use metal tongs to move bacon and some other foods because we also use those metal tongs to move hot coals in our fire. And we also occasionally use a metal putty knife to dislodge any stuck-on food. But for the most part, we avoid metal utensils because we're afraid they will damage our seasoning. And we avoid plastic and nylon utensils because these materials can melt in hot temperatures and leave traces of nylon or plastic in our food. My sixth tip is always start with a clean pan. In a campsite, you may have to cook 2 or 3 different things in the same skillet or Dutch oven. But each time you finish cooking one thing, you need to completely clean that pan before you cook another food item in it. To clean a pan, boil about 1/2 cup of water in it and then gently scrape the bottom with a wood spatula. If any food is difficult to remove, you can use a putty knife to remove it. Once the food is removed, rinse the pan with hot water and you're ready to start cooking the next item. If you don't clean your pan before starting to cook a new item, you'll frequently find that the new food is more likely to stick to the pan. My seventh tip is, before cooking any food, you should heat the pan so that it is warm but not too hot. One way to test the heat of a pan is to carefully touch the handle. It should be very warm near the pan, almost too hot to touch, but still be cool on the back end of the handle. And a Dutch oven should be very warm low on the side, but yet still cool near the top of the sides. As you're heating the pan, you should also add oil to it before cooking any food. The type of oil and the amount will depend on what foods you're cooking. For most fried foods, about 3 tablespoons of oil would be about right, but you'll need more oil for deep fried foods, and you'll need much less oil for pancakes and a few other similar type foods. My ninth tip is keep the heat as low as possible. Now you can start with a medium-high heat. But as the pan gets warm, you'll need to gradually reduce that heat so that when the pan is completely hot, you need almost no heat at all to cook your food. If you're cooking on a stove, you can easily reduce the heat by turning the knob closer to the off position. But if you're cooking on a campfire, you'll have to reduce the heat by moving the flaming pieces of wood toward the outside edges of the fire ring. After cooking or searing your meat, you'll have to decide whether or not you want to save the oil. We always save the oil after cooking bacon and use this bacon oil to cook many other foods. And we sometimes save the grease after frying beef or chicken, especially if we plan to make a stew or gravy. We'll also need to decide whether or not we want to save the fond. The fond are the tiny pieces of meat and fat that stick to the bottom of the pan after the meat has been cooked. It is loaded with flavor and should be saved anytime you're making a soup, a stew, a sauce, or a gravy. To save the fond, pour off all of your grease first and then boil about a half a cup of water, and then gently loosen all of the stuck-on pieces with a wooden spatula, and then pour the fond and the water into a storage container. My 12th and final tip is to always clean, oil, and heat your pan after cooking each meal. I've already described how to clean the inside of the pan with hot water, but if you've cooked on a campfire, you'll also need to clean the soot off of the outside of the pan, and you can do this with a little bit of mild dish soap, water, and a scrub brush. After completely cleaning the pan, you'll need to apply a light coat of oil to both the inside and outside surfaces. Heat the pan until it smokes, wipe away the excess oil, and then let it cool. Well, this concludes my 12 tips for cooking with vintage cast iron. I hope that you found something of value in this video. For more information about cast iron and campfire cooking, please visit my website, moderntentcamping.com. A link is provided in the discussion below. And while you're there, visit my Amazon store page where you'll find some links to some great camp kitchen items.
Take more trips, travel further, visit more attractions, and spend less money. Go tent camping.
What you say we get away from these city lights? Pack up your tent and ride. You know you gotta pack up your tent and ride. Pack up your tent and ride. Good grub cooking on a fire tonight. Pack up your tent and ride.